Hello and welcome back to the fourth episode in this mini-series of Only a Bag's Italian travel podcast, house-sitting series. My name is Nathaniel Mellor, and with me today is...
Hi, I'm Darcy.
Hello, Darcy. That was a bit of a rough opening there, but I think we
It's
think
good.
we pulled
You
it
got
off.
a lot of words in. I liked it.
All of them, all the keywords,
Yeah.
packed it in there. What are we talking about today in this specific episode?
We're talking about the house in House Sit.
Putting the house in house sit. We're tying it in a little bit with that last episode, especially we kind of talked about when you're there, Darcy mentioned, I think you're the homeowner when the homeowner's away.
In a very light sense.
And we really wanted to kind of talk about I think actually one big thing is cleaning, but also about money exchanging hands, if money is supposed to exchange hands. And then anything else that sort of comes to us as we are talking, because that's about 90% of these podcasts, I realize. It's just sort of like, there's another thing.
Yes.
But the first thing actually is the money, I think is a pretty good place to start.
Yeah, so there are, I would say, three rough categories of house sitting. There's the kind that we do, where in exchange for taking care of the pets and the house, we get to stay in someone else's home and, experience what it's like to live there. There's also, a version where you get paid to house and pet sit, and I think that's actually pretty big in the UK. And there's Rover, and that I think you have to be a UK citizen to use Rover.
I think they've actually expanded. They're now fairly international.
Oh, okay, cool. So you could be paid to house and pet sit. We don't do that, and I should just go ahead and say now that we take house sitting and pet sitting incredibly seriously, and but it's not a job. It is living in someone else's house as if they were living there, treating their pets, with all the love you could possibly give them, because that's assumably what the homeowners are doing. With getting paid, I think that transfers this into more of like a job. That is what you are there to do very specifically, and you have to be kind of perfect at it. I don't know. That's my take.
It definitely, I think we house sat once for a couple, and then we house sat them for them again in a different house that they owned. It wasn't somebody else's house. And they actually it was funny. They mentioned they had a family friend, a young man, I think in his early 20s, mid 20s, and he was through Rover taking care of somebody's house. But he was kind of leaving it like trashed. Like he just left like takeout food containers around, and it was just kind of spreading. It was basically like his stuff had exploded all over this house, and he was just kind of using stuff there without really washing it. And apparently he kind of just left the house like that. And this woman though left him a really good review.
And he got paid.
And they were sort of mind boggled. And they're like, "You guys don't charge us. I mean, do you and they were it was like one of those really like
they were really apologetic. They were like, "We're not paying you. We're so sorry."
Yeah, and of course we genuinely was we explained like we're fine with it, because like there's a weird moment though when it does, like as Darcy mentioned, it does transform from like we're helping you out, we're doing you a favor,
and a mutual sort of helping each other out sort of situation.
Exactly. And then it transforms into I'm paying you to do a job. I want it done exactly how I said I wanted it done. This isn't for you to explore. It's not for you to be here working on your own stuff. It's for you to take care of my animal, and when I say something, I want it done. And I think it kind of gets a little sticky potentially.
Yeah, I think there's just more tension.
Yeah.
Potential in that situation. But if that's what you're looking for, go for it.
Well, especially I think when people are like, you didn't meet my expectations.
Right.
Because when you're going over there and you're flying yourself over, you're paying to get to the house, you pay for your own food while you're there. It's sort of like there really isn't much of an expectation as past, please leave my pets alive. And I will say actually on that very note, as we talk about getting paid or paying, and as Darcy is going to unveil her third option, is that, and we'll circle back to it, but is that you really shouldn't be buying the pet any food. That should already be done ahead of time.
Yeah.
But the third option is
paying to rent a house that also happens to have a pet in it.
Yeah.
It's quite popular in the US, and it seems like it's quite popular in places where property prices are higher. I don't think it's cool to rent out your house and also ask the renters to take care of your pet on the side. If I don't mean to offend anybody, I haven't had good experience with that. I think it comes across as though the homeowner or the pet owner isn't valuing their pets as highly maybe as they should be, or the renters.
And if I might add, I want to just be clear. When Darcy says rent out the apartment or the house, it's like Airbnb, and also there's a cat there. Not like you're living in a place for 6 months or a year and taking care of their cat because the cat refuses to leave this house or something. It's very specifically like, imagine going to an Airbnb and you're like, oh, I'm paying $130 a night. Oh, and I have to feed your cat? Like, can you just bring your cat with you? Like, can you take the cat? I don't understand. And I think that's what we've heard of. And I don't know if we've done it. We've heard of it done. We've been offered it. Like, you're like, oh, you guys could stay with us. It's only X, Y, Z, per month. And then we're like, well, not if you have to take care of your cat.
I've heard mixed reviews of it. I mean, some people don't mind. And if you're one of those people, awesome. And I really don't mean to offend anybody if this is something that you've done and it works for you. That's great. I have also heard accounts of paying full price in a very expensive area for an apartment, thinking that you have a vacation, and suddenly you have, another, a whole life, a little cat life there that you have to take responsibility for,
It might work, I think, for certain people, of course, because, like, as we mentioned in the last episode, a couple of times already, that, like, pets do limit your ability to travel around. So you can't, it's obviously popular on a vacation to have a home base and then to go explore with a rental car, buses, or something like that. But if you have to take care of a pet or feed it every night, presumably, or go take it for walks or something like that, it does limit your ability to travel around and to explore an area. And I think that's something that's already been kind of always a sticking point for us, as well as this sort of like, it almost says it brings up a bit of animosity. It's sort of like, you're making me pay you and I have to do you a favor, rather than like, and that being said, if it's like one of those things where, the person's clear with like, I can either charge you $1,500 a month or $600 a month and you take care of my cat, then I'm like, I see, I totally get it. But we've seen plenty of house sits in places that are like, New York City and Manhattan that are, free. You just go and you take care of somebody's cat for 2 weeks and you're not paying them to live in their, $2,800 a month apartment.
Yeah.
I think it's just one of those things where some people are like, oh, I can get a little money out of this. And it's like, yeah, but that, to me, I think to us, because we've talked about this before, especially there's a house that we found in Florence, and it was just one of those things where it felt like, because we talked to this person on the phone, and it felt like they weren't valuing our time very much. It felt like they were sort of like, what else can you do for me? And I'm like, past paying you and taking care, nothing, like,
and doing some handiwork around your house and taking care of your pets, and
right.
It just became a lot. So again, it goes back to reading the requirements, and that's not something you would find necessarily on Trusted House Sitters or Mind My House or anything, but just being honest with yourself about what you're actually looking for and what you're willing to do.
But I think we did talk about the paying utilities, and sometimes people will ask you for a slight rent payment as well. And it always seems really alluring because it's never that much. It's always like, oh, $200 a month plus utilities. And you're like, wow, to live in this small, large farmhouse in France seems really kind of quite cheap. But then, I don't know. It always just seems like there are other options, and that maybe that person isn't quite valuing the time that you're giving to take care of their pets. And I think so the other paying, most of these house sits, most of these websites as well don't really allow for money to exchange hands. They're very clear about that. They're very clear about the homeowners don't have to kennel or doggy cat hotel their pets. I don't know another verb for that. And you don't have to pay to live somewhere. And a lot of them are sort of, it's almost a little bit like couch surfing. They're kind of founded on that like belief of like there's an equal exchange of energy, time, and space. Basically, it's sort of like, because couch surfing, you're not paying to stay on somebody's couch for a night or two. You might take them out to dinner. That's about it. And the same thing for house sitting. It's like you're not in theory paying. I do think that the people that were sort of not sad about not paying us, but they're very I think they realized that we should be charging. They ended up giving us a few €100 for like gas money.
Which was incredibly generous.
It was, because we did need gas money. We had no idea that gas costs so much money in France, or in places that are not America, I guess. And it was sort of mind-boggling that it was like, wow, we just went to the grocery store and paid like $15 in gas.
And I think that's also one of the benefits of doing the sort of equal exchange, no money exchanging hands, not getting paid but not paying to be there, because we've become friends with so many of the people that we've house sat for. We were strangers and now we're good friends, and we've had repeat house sits with them, but also we just keep in touch, and it's really cool.
And I feel there's no that. I think part of it is too. We often ask when it comes around, like for instance, there's a house sit in Rome that we typically do the last few years, and actually part of the reason I'm talking about this house sitting whole thing is because we were in Rome. But this house sit, I think it's the third year we've done it, and we actually message him like after the first house sit. We just towards the summer, he's a teacher in Rome. We would message him and just like, hey, just double checking. We're making our summer plans. We're trying to get clear on where we're going to be. We bounce around a lot. He knows this. So we ask him like, do you need somebody this summer? Are you covered this summer? And I think if there was money exchanging hands, it would feel a little bit like, hey, are you?
Can you give us money again?
Yeah, exactly. And so we don't. I mean, obviously, it's really nice to not have that, I think. And anytime we see these friends, like any of the other house sitting friends, it's just sort of like, let's get together and do something. Let's get together and do something where you can pay me. It's just, let's get together and do something. So it does, I think, remove a lot of the stress and pressure from the situation.
And I was going to say a small note. It's a very big note. On a very big note, no matter how you house sit, whether you're doing an equal exchange, if you're being paid or if you're paying for it, your priority should be the pets. Yeah. And then also the house. But in every case, there's an animal and a life that is now your responsibility for a short time, and that should be your number one priority.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. That's like the sort of like the. I mean, I don't know. We've spent a lot of nights sort of being up with animals that are not feeling well, or I don't know, like 2 a.m, a dog's coughing, and you're like, well, that's not good. That just sounds like a good cough. And it's like, getting the number.
There was one sneeze that was terrifying.
There's like blood in the sneeze. And
God, we immediately called the pet owner. She's like, it's, I know that was scary, and I apologize that happened. It's okay. It happens sometimes.
He also, like, sometimes he would sleep, this dog would sleep and then wake up and his leg was asleep, but then it'd be asleep for like a week, and we just were like,
poor little guy. He had he's such a rough time. He's so sweet though. And then the cat, whenever the cats we pet sit for, she sleeps like she's dead. Yeah. And so we do that sort of like young parent, like, oh my God, is it dead? Should go listen to see if it's breathing. She's still breathing, and then you've woken her up and she's grumpy with you, but But
sometimes you try to shake her and she doesn't wake up, and I'm like, oh my God, I just killed a cat. Like, I should not have done this. And then she sort of startlingly comes awake, and then she's looking around, panic, and you're like, oh, thank God, you're alive. So yeah, there's a couple scary moments, I realize, because when it's our cat, it's very different.
No, it's equally terrifying.
I think I know our cat not well enough at this point to be like, oh, that's normal. So it's with somebody else's cat, I'm like, it's normal for our cat to sleep like the living dead, not for your cat, which I guess is a zombie is the living dead. So it's just the dead. That's funny. I never got that. Okay. Well, all this talk about being paid has reminded me that we need an ad break.
I do.
Don't you just love that seamless segue?
Monetizing
segue? Monetizing segue. And after the ad break, we're going to talk more about house sitting, believe it or not. We're still on it.
Welcome back from the ad. Let's talk about what to expect of the house when you get there, and then I guess when you leave. When you get to a house sit, it should be quite clean. I mean, it's someone else's house. Someone's living there, yeah.
One thing, actually, I just raised my hand in case people were wondering what Darcy said about. One thing to actually very quickly mention is there's a really good chance you actually might not go straight to the house.
Ooh, good point, yes.
I think out of the... only one of the houses we've actually done, we've met somebody at their house, and it was really kind of awkward because we were staying at somebody's house. It was a house sit in France, and he said, "Are you here for the house sit or the Airbnb?" We thought like, "Oh, the house sit." He's like, "Okay, well, I have somebody coming to stay at the Airbnb tonight," And we're like,
yes, because
is that going to be normal?
they had, okay, so this person also used their house as a, rent a private room, Airbnb, and I think they had 3 rooms in their apartment, 3 bedrooms.
Something like that.
Because
yeah.
they ask, typically we stay at a inexpensive hotel or something at least the night before when we get into the city that we were going to be house sitting. But in this case, they offered for us to stay in their house, sort of like an overlap.
It was in their living room.
Yes, we stayed in the living room. Okay, so there was an overlap of them being in their house. We also stayed in their house that night. They left the next morning.
With the person from Airbnb.
Yes. I think they had accidentally booked that night or something. And so there were a total of, 5 of us in their apartment one night?
Yeah.
The couple who was the homeowners, the Airbnb person, and then us.
But they're also like, it was really kind of strange because they're like, you can't use the extra bathroom. That's only for the Airbnb person. And we said, okay. And then we also like ended up not being able to use their bathroom because there was no door on it. And it was a very strange evening. It was a sort of like, I think one of the couple went to bed first, so it was like 8:30, 8:40, and we couldn't take showers because it would wake this person up, and it was just like,
I forgot how kind of odd the beginning of that house sit was.
Very strange beginning to this house sit, which again, this is sort of par for the course, I should say. It seems very par for the course, but we've had other house sits like Darcy mentioned. I think the one in Scotland, we went a week early actually, just to. It was our first ever house sit, so we wanted to kind of get a lay of the land, so to speak. And
we found a really inexpensive, incredible B&B situation.
Yeah, I think it was
we're not wealthy.
Night.
I don't know if you guys gathered that from us.
Saying we're not wealthy almost every podcast episode.
Do we?
Yeah,
I think
so. And we ask people to listen to these ads. They pay us 1 cent, and we're really excited.
So we found a really affordable, really great B&B room. So we got to stay in Scotland a week before our house sit.
In Edinburgh, actually, which apparently I cannot pronounce properly according to the people I house sat for. She was very clear to tell me I was mispronouncing it. And I still probably am. I don't think it's changed. I'm not sure. At this point, I'm really not sure how to pronounce it, so I just change it every time I say it. But no, I think most of them we do go a day or 2 early usually. One to just kind of get a feel of the area, the town, the space, and then another just to make it so. Like for this one in Scotland, basically there was we met them at a cafe near their house. We had a conversation, a couple of hours, and then they took us back to see the apartment, the house, and their dog and their cat. So it was a sort of just like easing in moment of like, oh, let's just feel each other out. Let's see how this is. And there is, I will like just add in if something happens. I know that Trusted House Sitters has one of the options on one of their plans is like cancellation, house sit cancellation. It's one of their more expensive plans. But basically, if somebody does cancel your house sit, even when you're there, they will pay for up to like 12 nights in a hotel at $100 a night. So which is nice. It's something that I'm like, oh, that would be amazing for us on the off chance that, it's one of my biggest fears is that, are they going to cancel as soon as we get there? Are they going to be like, actually, I don't like you guys?
Which has never happened so far.
Thankfully.
Yeah.
Well, not thankfully. I mean, it'd be very strange if it did, but, still. So, yeah, I think that's the bigger one is just when just first entering the house, spending some time to get used to the people, to get used to the house, rather than just jumping straight in. If you have that luxury, I will say not everyone has the luxury because if you're talking about things like time off of work, trying to get your extra days, kind of the flights lined up, et cetera, it might not be possible. And on that note, leaving, I think very rarely have we actually seen the person when we're leaving. Almost always, they will come back once we have left because it's, you're getting back from a trip, you're flying in, especially if you're coming from, if they're visiting the United States, it's a 8-9 hour flight. So
meaning that we would leave the house in the morning and they would arrive in the afternoon or night.
Exactly.
So the pet's taken care of. It's just that there's no overlap of people in the house.
Right. And then part of that means there's no rundown. There's no like, here's how I left things.
Right. Good point.
And this can be difficult. There was one house sit where we were basically like, they had this washer dryer combo, but the washer obviously would get the clothes or the sheets wet. And then the dryer would dry them, but the washer wouldn't work if it was over a certain weight. I think it was like, it would just say too heavy or something like that. So we couldn't dry these sheets. We had just the one sheet in there and we couldn't dry it, and we tried wringing it out.
To clarify, we put them in there. They were not too heavy, but
yes, once they got wet.
Yeah, a single very wet sheet can be quite heavy.
And so I think this whole issue with the thing, and basically we texted these people like, just hang it up and leave it. Don't even worry about it. So we hung it up in their laundry room, which is like a sort of like a lot of laundry rooms in Europe. They all have like a little a grate on the floor for like if things do overflow, it's not going to like flood your house. But they got back and we were already gone, hours gone by this point, and their entire laundry room was flooded. And they were, sort of accusing us of breaking their washer and leaving and this whole thing. And we're like, I think it's just the sheet was, this sopping wet sheet was dripping onto the floor. It probably just, it probably just didn't go out the grate.
And we did everything we could to get this sheet incredibly dry before we left, but we had to clean the sheets before they got back, and we were going to be late, missing our transportation out of the city, so we got it as dry as we could.
We're like wringing it in the wash, like in the bathtub. It was this whole
things
thing.
Things happen,
And but no, it ended up well. I mean, basically they just, I think they ended up actually leaving us a really nice review once they realized we didn't break their washer, and that it was just the sheet. And I say these things because sometimes things happen. This isn't like to warn you not to do it. It's just sometimes things are weird, and people are, people are sort of like, people. People. Like I trusted somebody to let them into my home, and then they broke my washer. And that, like Darcy mentioned earlier, kind of brings it full circle. Is when you do arrive at a house, you are going to find it in a certain state, typically clean.
Yeah.
I think always we've gone to a house and they've cleaned it as if somebody's coming over, we should clean the house. And in that sense, we also, part of our thing that we tell people is try to leave it cleaner than you found it.
We're Montessori kids. We went to a Montessori school, and I think we were ingrained at a 4 or 5 year old age that anytime you arrive somewhere, when you leave that place, it should be cleaner than when you found it.
100, yeah, definitely 100%. And this, like, not to tell you everyone who's listening how to clean a house, but we do, like, there's also this sort of idea that we have that when somebody gets home, I don't know if you guys ever travel and you get back to your house and it's not like as clean as you left it, you're like, man, this is kind of messier than I left it. And then we're wondering what happened, and you realize there's just you. And then you're like, I just left this house a mess.
It's a very personal story for Nathaniel.
It's a very personal story.
It was this weekend that you left some dishes in the sink, and you got back and we left some dishes in the sink. Nathaniel got back.
Where were you living?
Thinking, who used these dishes and left them dirty?
Yeah.
Oh, it was me.
And it was only 3. It was like a plate and 2 cups, but it was still a impactful moment. But it happens a lot. I think, like, I know when I was younger, much younger, like I'd go visit my grandparents and I'd get back and my mom would have made my bed, and it was always amazing. It was like, or sometimes cleaned my room and made my bed. And then once I hit like 12, she stopped doing that. So I'd get home to a messy room and a messy bed. And that just never felt good. So I was like, oh, I should clean my room before I go and make my bed. And it's the same thing. It's the same principle, I think, when people get back from traveling, like, wherever they're going, especially internationally, rather than just like up the street to visit family. They get back, they're tired. It's been a long day. And I have this sort of notion that people, can forget how their house looked. They're expecting it to look as they left it. And I think sometimes people can forget that they didn't necessarily leave it as clean as they think they did. So one thing we've started doing is like over cleaning their house, which I will say there's for us, there's a period of it being like, we overthought this whole process, by the way. If you can tell from this episode, this overthinking episode, we thought this whole process, like if we leave it too clean, they might wonder what went wrong at the house and why we had to clean it so well. Or they might take it as a subtle sign that we are being rude and saying it wasn't a very clean house when we found it, so we left it cleaner to show you how clean a house should be. Obviously, we mean none of these things.
Yeah.
We just thought it might be nice when you get home to have a very clean house.
So we do. I mean, we clean everything, sweep, mop most of the time. Obviously, there's no dishes left in the sink. We clean out all of our possible groceries, vacuum, wipe down bathrooms. I like to leave the pillows quite nice, on the fluffed on the couch. Just because like Nathaniel said, it's nice to come home to a clean, tidy place and essentially most of the time just take a nap. But, coming into a happy, warm, clean little place is really comfortable rather than coming in and seeing like, oh gosh, here's all this stuff I have to do and I'm already tired from my trip.
And I think even like we do things like, and this is hard, I think, in Europe because trash days work differently than in America. But we try to take out all the trash, which is just so there's no. I say it works differently because there's usually a different day for different trash. Like the plastic and the metal go out one day, the paper another day, the mixed trash another day, and then the compost actually goes out. And I say that one specifically because that was the one that tends to smell the most. It smells like compost, and that's not something you want to leave for somebody else to take out. We also, I mean, sometimes we get a little bit crazy in the sense of like we clean the windows if they're particularly smudged, wipe down door handles if we notice that like, oh, just, using the door handles got them all smudgy. I think sometimes we'll just, I don't know, it's like, I think once we organized somebody's closet because it was like their shoe and vacuum room, and we just was like, all right, you're just gonna take out all the and their washing machine was in that room, so we just sort of took out everything, cleaned the floor, vacuumed, put everything back really nicely, and I think they noticed a few days later. I think they messaged us like, I just noticed you just cleaned up, thank you so much. And it's a little like, it can get obviously a little silly, but I think mostly it's just a way to kind of basically want to get invited back, which is would be nice. But two, to really make it a good experience for people when they.
Yeah, I mean, I think it shows that we care, and if you do it too, I think it'll show that you care, and people will appreciate it.
Yeah, that you treat their stuff like it. Also, I think shows how well you were treating their things when they were gone.
Oh, one sort of odd thing. Remember to put their furniture back or little like knickknacks. Like if you've I don't know, if you moved a candle or read some of their books, or just make sure they're back where you found them. Sometimes I'll have moved like the coffee table or something to paint, or I don't know what it would be, but I just, we try to put everything back to where it relatively was.
We definitely have moved some furniture at our time, and not because it's in a bad place, but because it's, well, sometimes actually it's like, there's always like sometimes living rooms that have like 18 chairs in there, and you're like, I used 2, and some of these chairs are dining room chairs. Why are they in the it's this whole thing. So we sometimes will move some things, not because we don't like it, but because we are people, and I don't want to run into somebody's chairs over and over again.
That is a problem for Nathaniel.
That is a huge problem for me. And so there's also obviously things like Darcy's mentioning putting books back and stuff, but also with like candles, we've used people's candles. I think one time they were just like, I mean, I will say, please, this all ties together, but candles, hand soaps, dish soap, dryer, clothes, liquid. What is that?
Yeah, like washing detergent?
Yes, thank you, detergent. Anything like that, any consumable. Like we've been told basically, feel free to use the candles. They're not nice candles. We got them from TJ Maxx.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I think some people really like their candles or toiletries or whatever it is. Some people have very specific things, and usually the things that the things that they use consistently or have spent a lot of money on and don't want a house that are just using up will be put away in a cabinet or something, but also it's been our experience that people are very clear. They're like, anything here you can use. There's shampoo, there's this thing, there's that thing, you can use those things, feel free. Candles, I'm always worried about candles because sometimes they're very expensive. So we use them when we've been told we can use them. If you're in Europe, or, well, I guess anywhere, if you're near an IKEA has some great inexpensive candles if you're a candle person and you want to bring in some to the house,
Or if they have IKEA candles already and you just want to use them and replace them. And the same thing with hand soap. We actually, in the Scotland house set, once they had like all these really nice things, all these nice soaps and little like lotions and candles, and we were like, we actually think we commented them like, these are really nice things. And like, oh no, we got it from, I think it was TK Maxx in UK, not TJ Maxx.
And we felt bad because I think we were there for a reasonable amount of time,
like
and
a month and a half. Yeah,
we used up a good portion of the things just because we're people, and I certainly felt really bad because they looked so fancy.
And they were like, oh no, it's like £3 over at, the
TK Maxx. So we went and, replaced a few things.
And that's something, I mean, obviously, like, nobody's going to get mad at you for, obviously using the dish soap or using the dishwashing detergent or clothes detergent, or, like the bag, because again, the trash has to be separated into different bags as well. Nobody's going to be like, oh, you used it. We try to replace them, especially with the same kind that we used. But it's, it's like, it's hard too sometimes when you get there and it's a full bottle and you leave and it's half a bottle. It's like, well, you're not going to replace half a bottle.
I mean, if you use it up and you need more while you're there, it's like, we've bought dish soap and or trash bags, like a couple things like that. But all of that should be there for you. Like Nathaniel mentioned before, all of the animals' food should be there. Unless, you've agreed and they've left you money to buy extra. And all of the regular things that exist in a house should be there.
And we actually, with the food, that is something I mentioned earlier. Yeah, they should leave you minimum enough food to get through the stay, usually a little extra. And you shouldn't, that's like something you should not be buying, for the animal, basically, in any sense at all. However, obviously, if you do want to buy the animal treats, we ask, the homeowners basically, what treats does your animal like? What, which kinds are they okay with? Which are they not okay with? I think, again, Darcy mentioned the dog who had to have these pills, and they were like, if you find an easy way, like just putting in a piece of meat or something, that's awesome. But, eventually he'll eat the pill if you sort of shove it down his throat. I think we were like able to trick him into eating it with like pieces of meat or something we'd put it inside of.
Which is a little unfortunate because I think they were heart pills.
Oh yeah, so
and we were giving him. I mean, you had to. It's like he takes his medicine only if he has like something yummy on it.
Yeah, he would kind of like hold it in his mouth for a while and then spit it out when you weren't looking. He was kind of a pain. I love him.
It was really cute though. He thought he was so subtle.
Yeah, he would kind of pretend to swallow a lot. That was another thing he did, and then 2 minutes later he'd be in the corner like spitting it, and he's like, ugh, gross. So these are just some things. I mean, these are those sort of things to kind of pay attention to when you're at the house or leaving the house. And before we continue, if you do not mind indulging us for another ad break, we will be right back. Welcome back for the ad break. I don't know if you guys get these ad breaks or not, or get the ads or not. When I listen to, I only get like half of them. I don't know how ads work. I apologize if you're just hearing me say, here's an ad break, and then nothing happens. But to go back to what we were talking to, leaving the house, the one other thing we do like to do is to give people a little rundown of how we left the house. Usually it's a text.
Usually we text them like whenever we're leaving, just to let them know like, hey, we've left. Here's the state of things. Here's how your animal seems to be feeling. Things like that. You can also leave a handwritten note. I think it's safer just to message them because they'll get it, and you can get a response back.
Yeah, that's a big and because I think sometimes it's just. I mean, we'll just be like, your plants got war. I mean, once this past summer, we accidentally let somebody's ornamental pepper plant die.
Okay, but we did check around at farmers markets and such, and all of the other ornamental pepper plants had also died, so I don't think it was us.
Yeah, I think it was the season, right?
Yeah. And then we felt so bad about it, so we let the homeowner know, and he just said, forget the pepper plant. I picked that up from like some random thing. I didn't need it. You brought my other plant back to life, so.
Yeah, he had something on his porch that ended up dying, and to be fair, I think it was, it just wasn't. I'm like, it was the summer, so I'm like, maybe it was dead anyway. But he was very excited for us,
and not at all upset about his poor little pepper plant that died.
But we do. That's the kind of stuff that we do let people know about in this little like message to them, in this note to them. The other thing I want to mention. I was going to mention earlier, but I think now's a good time to mention, is the sort of, we almost always break something when we go to somebody's house.
Yeah, I mean, it's usually like a plate.
Or a glass.
And usually on the first day.
Right. It's usually within the first few days. And part of that is, and I'm saying this not because it's good, it's to let you know that it might happen. And it's because, you're in an unfamiliar place with unfamiliar cups and glasses in an unfamiliar physical space. And a lot of time it just happens when we're taking glass down or putting it up, misjudging distances, thinking there's more distance between the sink and the drying rack than there actually is. Sometimes it's as simple as, it's like they wanted their cups to be 4 deep, but then for them to be 4 deep, they have to be arranged just so. And if you don't, and you close the door, it cracks the cup in the front or something.
I think I always smack something into the faucet, washing dishes the first time. Or I'll misjudge how like slippery their particular brand of dish soap is or something. It's often those times that get me. And all of that being said, people probably are not going to leave you their fine china.
Yeah.
We have never had a problem or anybody freak out about us breaking a cup or a plate or anything like that.
Yeah, we usually leave it out on the counter. Just be like, we broke this. We're happy to pay for it. Even in that sense, though, I think one of the things we do to sort of mitigate this is try to use the stuff we recognize as being bought at like IKEA or at a very cheap home goods type store, and not something that seems handmade or nice. I think we kind of stick to these sort of really inexpensive items when we're there. But that's, I mean, this is all to say too, not that it's going to happen for sure. It's more just to make sure that you know that if something goes wrong, it's not the end of the world. It's just life happening kind of thing. And sometimes things break, and that's totally fine. It'll be okay.
And to let the homeowner know. I mean,
100%.
don't be embarrassed about it. Just be clear and honest is the best
Yeah.
way to handle it.
Don't try to hide it. I mean, and if you, basically, it's like, even if you break something and you're like, I know how to get another one of these, I can replace it for you, just still let them know. Just to kind of keep that communication open, basically keep it clear. Because we found that's always the best mode of operating. And I think that brings us to the end of this episode. Was there anything else to mention?
No, I think that's it.
Alrighty then. Well, thank you guys for listening to another episode. This one is about the house and house sit, but it kind of covered a lot more than that, I think.
It did. Well, they always do.
They always do.
Or at least we just talk a lot.
Mostly that one, I think. And in the next episode, we are going to talk about, just briefly, going to go a little bit in depth into our favorite, currently our favorite house sitting websites, just to help you all get started somewhere, to give you just a place of reference.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you have a lovely rest of your day.
Yeah.